All right, so we're going to be talking about data analysis and central tendency today. Yeah, so basically what this means is a way to look at a bunch of numbers. For today, I just picked a couple, but a lot of times this is when you have like hundreds of numbers. A way to boil it down to just one number so that you can kind of understand what's happening. There's 4 ways that we can do this, 3 and a 4th number that helps us understand it. You need to know how to calculate each of these and understand what each of them mean. Going to start with mean first. You've probably heard it called average, like if you find the average mark of the class or your average mark in a class, that's what mean is. It's kind of like the shared number. It's hard to understand and it's hard to describe well. Basically, it's a number that kind of represents the whole group, how the whole group does, the whole group of numbers. The way that you find it is you take the sum of all the numbers and you divide it by the number of numbers. So let's do some examples. So if we took this first data set, the sum means we add them all together. So 2 plus 5 plus 10 plus 14, okay? And we would divide it by 4 because there's 4 numbers. So that would give us so 2 plus 5 plus 10 plus 14, 31 divided by 4 gives us 7.75. Okay? If we wanted to do it for the second set of numbers, okay, this is the exact same thing. We're going to add them all up. This time we're going to divide, so we find the sum. And this time we're going to divide by 6 because there's 6 of them. So we're going to do 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 plus 4 gives us 16 divided by 4 gives me the average of 4. Sorry, divided by 6, my bad. I was like, that doesn't sound right. Divided by 6 gives you 2.66. Okay. Even though it's a decimal. So these numbers kind of represent, if this was a group of a bunch of people, the 7.75 means like the average person in that group has $7.75. Or if this was like the marks, the levels people are getting, 1, 3s, and 4s, the average for the class is 2.6. The median is essentially a way of trying to check these numbers because sometimes they're not very representative. So for example, when we look at this group, most of the group is getting good marks, level 3s and 4s. A couple of them are getting 1s and dragging it down. So the average might not be representative. The median looks at all of the numbers and tells us what's in the middle. So looking at these two together can kind of help us understand how a group overall or how a group of numbers is, what number represents them. So literally all you do for a median is you write them all in order from smallest to biggest and find the middle. So if we were going to do, let's do the second set first. So it's 1, 1, 3, 3, 4, 4. Okay. These are already in order, so it's a little easier. We cross them out one at a time, one on the top, one on the bottom. Sorry. One on the top, one on the bottom. And then if we're left with 2, we just average those 2 numbers. In this case, they're both 3, so the median was 3. So that was close to our average, but a little bit higher. Over here, this data set, we had 2, 5, 10, 14. So again, we cross numbers out. We cross out the bottom and the top number, and we have 2 numbers left in the middle. So we find the average of those, which ends up being 7.5. So again, this was pretty close to the mean. When you have a mean and median that are pretty close to each other, that means that they're pretty representative. All right, the mode basically means the most common number. So I'm going to make an example right now that's a little bit easier to see. Do like that. When we look at this list of numbers, we could find the average or the median number, but really it's interesting to know which number is happening the most. There's different situations where this is more important, but in this case, the mode would be 3 because it happened the most times. So really, all you need to do, you don't really need a calculator for this one. You just look at it and you see what's the most common. In this first set of numbers we had, they're all tied. They all have 1 number. So there isn't actually a mode. Okay? In the second set, again, they're all tied with each other, so there is none. If we had done it instead, where it was just like 1, 1, 3, 3, 4, if it was just like that, then both 1 and 3 would be our mode. There's 2 most common numbers. If it's all of them, there's nothing. The last one we're going to talk about is range. Range is basically the difference between the highest and lowest numbers. So it's trying to see how many different types of numbers exist in the data. So if I had numbers like this, the range would be 2, because the highest number is 3, the lowest number is 1, there's 2 numbers in between them. So that's the range. It's really easy to calculate. All you do is let me turn this off. Take high number, subtract low number. So again, it helps to have them in order. So for this one, we're going to take 14, because 14 was the highest number. Then we're going to subtract 2, because 2 was the lowest number. So 14 was the highest, 2 is the lowest. When you do that, you end up getting 12. And this number doesn't really relate to the average or the median or mode or anything like that. It just tells you how much space there is, how much of a difference there is between the highest and the lowest. So try and think of it this way. If you had a big group of kids that were doing a class and you ended up getting the range, and the range was 70 on their marks, that means the highest kid and the lowest kid are 70% different. That means that there could be like a kid getting 30 and a kid getting 100. That's a huge difference. When you have a big range, it means that your data isn't necessarily as reliable because there's people on both extremes. When we do this second data set, so the highest number was 4 and the lowest number was 1, our range is 3. That's not a very big number, which means all the numbers are pretty close together. So as we can see when we actually look at the data, that means that our numbers are pretty close, and whatever averages and medians we get are going to be much more representative. That's basically it. Those are the 4 types. You need to be able to calculate all of them in any given set of numbers, whether it's this small or big, like 10, 20 numbers. You also need to be able to understand what they mean and be able to explain why sometimes mean isn't the best, because it might be disrepresentative because of weird numbers in the group. And that's it.